Well, hello and welcome once again to another edition of Pray on This. I'm your host, John Pray. As always, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Doesn't hurt you at all to do it, doesn't cost you anything, but it definitely helps the channel. If you don't like this platform or feel that my voice isn't being properly brought out here, join me on Rumble. So, I said at the breaking of Parliament and the breaking of the Ontario legislature and basically all the legislatures across the country for the summer break that I probably wouldn't be posting much over the summer. And here I am posting a video the very next day after making one yesterday. Well, why am I here today? Well, I'm here today because unlike normal, where in the normal seasons, I spend my day and start it by reading the papers and checking out the news from the night before, reading the opinion columns. I kind of take my time more in the summer. And I didn't get around to reading the Globe and Mail article from Andrew Coyne yesterday until last night after I got home from the Pierre Poilievre rally in St. Catharines. In it, Mr. Coyne rightly points out that there is a good chance that in the next federal election, the results in an outcome could have no party actually holding a clear win in seats. We can end up with plurality. We can end up with a small conservative minority. They are the party most likely to win the next election, but it could be 150 seats to 140 seats. It could be 145 to 140. If you go to Canada 338, it's a virtual tie, which I don't know how they're coming up with those numbers because in the last 8 polls, 7 of them have the Conservatives ahead by a substantial lead, and 3 of them even flirting with majority territory. But there is that one Leger poll that had the Liberals in the lead. Still don't know who they asked or talked to about that to have the Liberals at 33% support and the Conservatives at 31%. However, if we just play along with Mr. Coyne here, it is true that under the Westminster parliamentary system, which we follow in Canada, Pierre Poilievre could win the most seats in the next election. He could also win the popular vote. But due to the inefficiency of the Conservative vote, we could end up with close numbers in terms of seat count, with Poilievre having maybe 5 or a 10-seat advantage in seats, but no clear majority. And Coyne points out that Trudeau, being the incumbent prime minister, could refuse to resign as prime minister and could refuse to accept the election results. Write a throne speech, have Mary Simon come over, give a speech from the throne, see whether or not it passes, and if he can gain the confidence of the House. If he can do so by getting the majority of votes within the House, even though his party has less seats, and even though his party got even less popular support, he could still remain on as prime minister. That is legally allowed within the Westminster system. And it does happen in other countries quite regularly around the world that follow the Westminster system. However, there's long-standing Canadian tradition which calls on legitimacy. Now, whether you can legally form a government is one thing. Whether the people who are being governed by you feel that your government is legitimate, well, that can be a very different story. Now, I know there's people on the left, especially in the NDP, and I kind of understand why they're there and why they feel this way. Because they feel the way they feel because they know, I know, and you know, that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are never going to form the government. The best chance they ever had would have been if Jack Layton had survived and led them into the 2015 election. But Jack Layton was a special NDP leader, and probably the most special leader they have ever had. Jagmeet Singh is definitely not a Jack Layton. So the reason that I believe the NDP supports this idea is that they feel very powerful right now. This is the first time in terms of Canadian politics that they've really mattered, where they really feel that they're getting their things passed. Because Justin Trudeau needs their support, or he would fall. And he would have to face the electorate, and there's a very good chance he would not win the election. But pulling out archaic legal traditions is a far cry from being considered legitimate by the people of Canada, who you would be intending to govern. We saw this happen once before in 2008. In 2008, when the financial crisis struck just a month or so after an election, which returned a strengthened, yet still conservative minority government, the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Liberals all got together, and they proposed that they should be in charge of the government because they wanted to spend billions of dollars. And I mean billions of dollars more than even what Harper was going to spend to fight off the 2008 financial crisis. They made this proposition. They said they were going to go to the Governor General and present the fact that they should be allowed to make a throne speech and see whether or not they could gain the confidence of the House of Commons and supplant Stephen Harper as our Prime Minister and remove the Conservatives from power and put them in the opposition benches. I find it rather amusing that to fend this off, Stephen Harper prorogued Parliament. And he did so for 30 days. He used it as a cooling off period, but I find it amazing that a lot of the same people who are talking about Trudeau could remain in power even by losing the election are the same pundits who were going on about the legitimacy of what Dion and Layton and I want to say Yves Blanchet tried to do, and then said that Harper was playing cheap political tricks by proroguing Parliament to remain in power, and that it was an authoritarian power grab. I find it amazing that people who are trying to use an archaic law and loophole within our Constitution, one that has never been used by a federal government, are claiming that, geez, you guys who are trying to usurp the will of the Canadian people and ignore the results of an election in a very authoritarian way, would accuse the sitting Prime Minister of being authoritarian when he used the powers at his discretion to stave things off, allow things to cool, and let cooler heads prevail. Over the next 30 days, polling showed that there was extremely low support for the proposal being put forward by Jack Layton, Blanchet, and Dion. And when there was a new speech from the throne in January of 2009, it passed, and Stephen Harper governed for the next 2 years, going on to win a majority government. I think very much the same thing would happen again. And the reason I say that is that there is a large tradition in Canada that the result of an election is paramount, and that legitimizes the government. I don't care if a government's legal. It's whether or not the people feel it's legitimate. Canadians have always, en masse, been against what they consider to be backroom dirty deals, things that don't happen in the public eye. And they especially don't like when a politician tries to say their vote is irrelevant, because that's exactly what would be being said. If Trudeau got 136 seats and Poilievre got 147, but the NDP comes to the rescue with 20 seats and says, oh, well, your 136 plus our 120 is 156, and the Bloc say they won't block us. So therefore, we end up with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continuing on. Of course, in this scenario, the NDP would demand seats in cabinet, probably making Jagmeet Singh the deputy prime minister, and they would hold at least 3 major cabinet positions, probably demanding finance, health, and defense. Would the people of Canada accept this if a party that got, say, 18% support and 20 seats teamed up with a party that got 30% support and, say, 136 seats, supplanted a party that got 36% of the vote and 146, 147, maybe even 150 seats? I don't think that Canadians would view that as a legitimate government. And the whole premise of how democracies work is that we, the governed, accept the fact that those who are elected govern us. This would be saying, well, in Canada, there is no such thing as a national election. There are 345 smaller elections. And then the Prime Minister and the Cabinet is by the will of Parliament. Again, technically true, but not something that we follow in this parliamentary system in this country. I live in the riding of Brantford-Brant. My MP is Larry Brock. And the next time that there is a federal election and I go to the polls and I cast a vote for a Conservative, I will be casting that vote for Larry Brock. But I'm also casting that vote for the Conservative Party of Canada and for Pierre Poilievre. Because Pierre Poilievre can't be my Prime Minister unless Larry Brock is my MP. It's just the way the system works. And if I vote for the Conservative Party of Canada and my party wins the election by 5, 10, 15 seats, but along comes a coalition of a man in Burnaby South, British Columbia, and Papineau, Montreal, and say, well, yeah, but our team, even though we lost the election, my party lost and his party lost, if we add his seats to my seats, I have more than you and I have the right to govern. I won't consider that to be a legitimate government. But it's not just me and it's not just Conservatives. If we take a look at the polling in 2008, there was an awful lot of NDP voters, an awful lot of Liberal voters, and just about every Bloc voter were totally against that idea. Totally against a coalition government in this country and usurping the will of the people. In other words, yes, the opposition leaders had a legal right to govern if they could cobble together a coalition. But the people of Canada would not have considered it to be legitimate. I don't see that changing now. And I think that there would be a lot of Liberals who would feel that it was dirty pool. I believe that there would be a lot of NDP that would consider it to be dirty pool. And I don't think that the current leader of the Bloc would support that coalition in any way, shape, or form. So Well, Andrew Coyne wants to talk about these things, and there's been more than a few Laurentian elites who have put this out there. I'm expecting a column from Chantal Hubert from the Toronto Star in the next day or two to support Coyne, and possibly a David Aiken who will talk about it being technically legal. The widely held convention in this country is that the party that wins the election has the right to govern. And if Parliament won't allow them to govern, then we, the people, get to decide again. That's what happened in 1979 to 1980 when Joe Clark won a minority government. It lasted for 9 months. When it was brought down, Pierre Elliott Trudeau did not go to Governor General Edwin Schreier at the time and say, well, I can join with the NDP and I can just be Prime Minister again. He was too smart for that. He knew that for him to have any legitimacy as our Prime Minister, especially one who lost the election, he would have to go back to the people and get a mandate from them. And for those Laurentian elites, which obviously Mr. Coyne is one of, I don't think they understand that we, the people, will not legitimize what you technically and legally can do. I personally don't think it's going to matter anyways. There is growing support for the Conservative Party of Canada. All you have to do is go to a rally for the Prime Minister, which I've done. Go to a rally for the leader of the NDP, which I've done. Their crowds are small. They're less vocal. They're less excited. There's people there that you can tell they just feel defeated. You go to a Polyev rally, they're massively huge. Thousands of people, lots of cheers. Yeah, there are some more out there comments. But then again, there's some more out there comments at the NDP and the liberal rallies as well. But the fact of the matter is that I think the worm has turned. This government has hit its best before date and is expired. And we all know what we do with expired spoiled milk. We pour it down the drain and we get a new one. I think that's where Canadians are at. I don't think this will be an issue, but I couldn't just let this go by without smacking back at a smug Laurentian elite columnist who's talking about scenarios that the average Canadian would never accept. That, as always, is Pray on This. Once again, I wish you all a wonderful summer. I really hope that this is my last video until September when we get close to Parliament returning. But this has been a very different summer than the last few. Even 2021 where we had an election. This here has just been silliness. And the silliness, unfortunately, I think will continue. God bless you all and enjoy your summer. Get out, take a vacation if you can, have a staycation if you can't, and just spend it with family, friends, and have a good time.